being a business owner, you're constantly a problem solver. You need to be able to spot, where is this problem? How do I solve it? What's the most efficient way to solve it? Cost effective, time efficient, all the rest of it, but to then keep moving things forward.
Do you think it's because they can now exponentially increase their income?
If it stifles your growth, you've really got to ask yourself, I don't want to be the smartest guy on my team. I think that's a really good thing to stroke your ego. Learn multiple strategies. By understanding different strategies and being open to different ones, I think that's a huge key in actually growing your...
I have got a really special guest on the channel today. I'm not in my usual setting. I'm in the studio for Pizza and Property. I'm with the one and only Todd, who is obviously very uncomfortable on the other end because he's never behind. He's always behind the camera, and he's usually hosting one of these things, but he's going to share with us a couple of really key lessons that he's learned from interviewing hundreds of guests when it comes to personal development, borrowing capacities, and everything in between when it comes to property. So if you're interested, definitely keep watching. Hi guys, my name's Ravi and welcome back to Personal Finance with Ravi Sharma. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button because I talk about real estate, all things personal development, and financial freedom. Todd, welcome to the podcast/channel.
Thanks, man. Thank you for having me.
No, it's weird because you're technically on my channel, but I'm in your studio. So this is a really fun experience for me.
It's a bit of a hybrid situation, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Now, for anyone that lives under a rock and has no idea who Todd is from Pizza and Property, can you give us like the 2-minute summary of what you do currently?
So I currently produce the Pizza and Property podcast. And a few other podcasts as well. And I'm in the real estate space, I guess. That's a bad overview, but it's an accurate one.
No, I think you undersell yourself because when we were chatting off camera, I can tell my audience all of this, is that you actually have a lot of knowledge, a wealth of knowledge. And I think it's because you not only educate yourself with podcasts and books and things like that, but because you're talking to so many different people, you're picking up little nuggets of gold. And so when we're having conversations, you probably don't pick up on this as much, but I realized that there's a lot there. And I also realized, and I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but we're very similar as human beings. Very simple living, happy.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, optimistic people, and we stay in our own lanes. I
Very
love
much.
that.
Yep.
So now, you weren't doing the podcast forever.
No.
What were you doing in a previous life to the podcast?
So just before the podcast, well, actually, as the podcast started, I was a real estate agent. Before that, I was a diamond driller for a few years.
Okay, a diamond jeweler.
A diamond driller.
A driller. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So I started as an offsider underground. Then I started drilling. Then I actually left and worked in a call center for a few years. Didn't like that. Went back to drilling, but I was actually an offsider on drill rigs. But then I had an accident on a rig. Couldn't walk properly for like 4 years. That was a very, let's say, challenging time for myself. Made a lot of bad decisions, and then got into real estate.
So you started as a real estate agent, then went into that field, and then you came back into real estate?
No. So we started as a real estate agent when I was, I want to say 26, 27, something like that. I'd actually because I actually applied for the job just before I walked to Melbourne. So in 2014, I walked from Adelaide to Melbourne for charity.
Okay.
I remember calling up, like asking for the job, and then I told her what I was doing. She's like, yeah, why don't you do that first? I think you might be a bit distracted being a real estate. And I was like, okay. So I called them and I started like the next week, and I couldn't figure it out either because I went to a whole bunch of different companies and they all just wanted to talk about the walk. And I was like super passionate about property investing, even though I hadn't really done much. I owned a unit in town, like classic kind of almost off the plan story, not quite off the plan. And they just all wanted to talk about the walk. And then later, a few years later, I was like, I understood the amount of dedication to prospecting, to the follow-up, to just like pushing through that was necessary to be successful, as a real estate agent. And I was like, oh, now I can see why they only cared about that. Because it wasn't that it was real estate, but it was because if you can do this, like, of course, you can go and do this easy.
100%. So the journey goes from you doing all of that stuff. How does the idea of the podcast originate from?
So it started, I was probably early 30s. And so yeah, it would have been around 2017-ish. I think it was 2019. Sorry, 2017 is when I bought the first investment property. Moved back in with mum because I was living in this like technically penthouse with a friend of mine. I wasn't earning much. I was on like No, so it wasn't 100. No, it was like, so
Yeah, it sounds like a lot, man.
yeah, no, I was about to say 138, but it was 38 grand a year. It was basically my base retainer. I was not a good real estate agent to begin with. And it wasn't that I was bad at the job. I was bad at selling myself for the job. Took me ages to find that balance between actually convincing someone that you're the person to sell their house, because it is a massive choice for someone to make. And I went from being like too like underconfident to too overconfident, and I had to find that kind of like little sweet spot in the middle that's like, I trust you.
Yep.
So that took a little while. So I was basically living off of a retainer, and yeah, a retainer is not very much money. Anyway, so then it hit me. Why am I paying all this rent? I own this one crappy unit. I can't renovate it. I can't develop it. I can't do anything with it. It's not really going up in value. They're building more buildings in Adelaide. I was like, what am I doing? So I ended up deciding to sell that, as much as it was like my pride and joy at the time. And then I was like, I'm going to move in with mum. And mum was single at the time, and she wasn't really cooking. So I was like, look, how about we do this? I'll take care of like bills. I'll cook for us, because I enjoy cooking. And
okay.
Saved her from like eating rice cream out of a can or whatever she was doing. And we actually gave each other a bit of company. It was actually quite nice to live with her as an adult. But there were still those moments where I was sitting in bed, kind of like single bed, back of mum's room in Morfett Vale. You're going like, I'm 30. Like, I don't think this is what life's supposed to be like.
This wasn't on my vision board.
Yeah, pretty much. And I'm very big on vision boards. I was actually looking at the vision board, and it's like these properties of this happy family and this dog and cat like house. And anyway, I'm like, this is a bit average. And I thought, well, I can sit here and feel sorry for myself, or I can do something. And I had this idea. It's like mum had this big shed out the back, and I'd got a bit of a media background. And I was like, I'll make a show. I think it was called like Your Property Talk or Your Property Show or something like that, which is probably a taken title now by someone else, but I don't know.
And what year is this in
This
context?
was 2019.
Okay.
And started making it, and it was problem after problem. We had like problems with the internet, trying to buzz people, or not buzz people, like get people on screen. Then we had all these issues. And my friend Jack at the time came around, and Jack was the one that's like, how about we just strip it all the way back to just like audio? And then if we get good at that, then we can start adding the cameras back in. We can build a set. We can do all these things. I was like, yeah, okay, cool. Let's do that. And people always ask me about the name, and I'm not honestly not sure 100%. But he'd just finished watching Man vs. Food.
Okay.
And I think he wanted to call it Man vs. Property. And I was like, oh, it's probably too much of a ripoff. But I think that's where the food connotation and like the properties like started mushing together. I'm pretty sure we actually had a few drinks at the time, and Pizza and Property was born.
Amazing. And since then, what episode are you up to now? Do you know?
I honestly can't tell you. No, it's about 550 episodes, I think, all up we've done. But that's releasing an episode every Friday, which is APN, which is just a little like 3-minute section of we basically scour the news for the entire week to get anything that is relevant to a property investor. And it's designed to just be this quick little 3-minute hit. Then we do weekly slices on Wednesdays, about kind of 10, 15 minutes, and then a full episode on a Sunday. But I started all of them at different periods. So that's why I genuinely don't know I can check if you want to open Spotify.
No, that's fine. We know it's in the hundreds though.
Yeah, it's a few.
Yeah, okay. And as part of that, you've obviously come across multiple people that have been super successful with what they do.
Yes.
Some within their own portfolios, but they're working in jobs. Some people are out there, building businesses, whether it's as mortgage brokers, buyer's agents, real estate agents, and everything in between. What are the, 5 key lessons that you've gathered across all of these podcast episodes that you can share with the audience and bring some value?
There's a lot, but one of the biggest ones for me that really stood out is build the business. I realized probably 100 or so episodes in, I haven't talked to like a single person that has built like a substantial portfolio that was PAYG.
Interesting.
Everyone was a business owner in some context, and like big business, small business didn't matter. But like there's a couple of people that, don't get me wrong, I've interviewed that have done quite well. But when it came to really scaling, like you remember what it's like, man. When you're watching YouTube when you're at the very start and you're looking at these guys and these girls, you're like, how do you do this? This is insane. What do you mean 30 properties? Like it just doesn't make any sense. And then you start connecting these dots behind the scenes, and it's all of these chats that you have both on camera and off camera. And that was one of them that wasn't ever actually a chat that I had with someone. It was just this little light bulb moment for me that was like, oh, this is obviously a key factor because everyone shares the same similarity of like successful in business.
It's interesting because, well, obviously a lot of those people, I'm going to say, didn't go straight into running a business. No. They started as pay as you go, employed and getting that income, and then they go on to building their business. It's interesting that you mentioned that a lot of them are all running their business. And do you think it's because they can now exponentially increase their income?
I think that's definitely a part of it, but I also think it's not necessarily just the what you achieve, but it's the who you become. Because being a business owner, you're constantly a problem solver, and I think that's so key with property. Like you and I were chatting just before, that it's like, if you want to build a bigger portfolio, it's not always just the property problem that's in front of you that you need to solve. Sometimes there might be a work problem in front of you. There might be a family problem that you need to solve. But you need to be able to spot, where is this problem? How do I solve it? What's the most efficient way to solve it? Cost effective, time efficient, all the rest of it. But to then keep moving things forward. It's that mentality that I think that you keep developing that is then complemented by, when it's done successfully, a bigger income. That really helps the scale.
I'd probably go a step further as well, because I agree with what you're saying. I also think that when you're running a business, it's pretty much 24/7. Like, you can't think of anything else.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is you have to have your portfolio quite passive. So I'm in the camp that we probably have too much time being spent on our portfolios. So we look at, what's the value today? What's the value tomorrow? With property, it's a bit harder to know what the value is every single day versus like a share portfolio or crypto or something like that.
Yep.
But that price or that valuation also then instigates some sort of emotional feeling internally as well. And I feel like we live in a life now where instant gratification is key, right? And so now, if you're running a business, you probably don't have enough time to go and look at your portfolio because you've got bigger fish to fry, which is your P&L. Am I going to make money this week? That's what you're focusing on now. And then the portfolio in the background sort of sits passively and does what it needs to do because time in the market is what you need. Whereas some people might get really bored at work and they're like, I'm scrolling, and they're probably looking at their share portfolio. Oh my God, it went down. I'm going to emotionally react and sell. Do you think that plays a bit of a part, or am I just... No,
I think you're right, because you're just making me think of a call of Bianca and I only 2 nights ago. And we've started this new thing now where it's like emails are getting surmised. So it's like, here's the property, here's the problem, and here's the potential solution, action or not action. And it's turning things that used to be like, doing this for 20 minutes each into like 30-second decisions. And I wouldn't have done that if the business wasn't so busy and so demanding and everything else was happening. So yeah, that makes sense.
Very nice. So we know first lesson is around having a business. You're probably going to need a business at some point. And that could also be something you complement with your full-time income. It could at least help. And that could help you scale up your portfolio. What's lesson 2?
The next one's around strategy, because the strategy is really important. And I think it's really, really important that you understand a strategy as well as you can. Like, you're either in the camp where you outsource and you build through a BA and you're like, cool, you take care of this for me. I'm just going to focus on the business, the job, the whatever. Or you need to learn how this works. But the thing that I really learned was, generally, when someone is going like, this is the only strategy that works, it's like, typically there is a thing that they're selling that's like, hey, well, I want to sell you this. And it's fine, because maybe it really does work really well for them and other people that do it. So this is certainly not poo-pooing any of that kind of stuff, but it's just more about, don't just learn like a thing. And this probably goes against what a lot of people think. It's the specialization kind of thing. Learn multiple strategies. Learn about, like, is maybe renovating is the worst thing for you, but maybe it's also the best. And maybe it's something that's actually going to help you like scale up. Or maybe that you really do need to learn how to chop the backyard off, because that could be the thing that is the difference between one of the properties you hold, like being an asset that's really going to help you springboard, or being that thing that's so negatively geared that it's the reason you can't buy for another 3 or 4 years. So by understanding different strategies and being open to different ones, I think that's a huge key in actually growing your portfolio.
I love that, because I often talk about this 3-pillar approach, and I talk about it more broadly, not just in real estate. So I talk about having 3 different asset classes that you focus on, right? I'm not saying that all of them you need to do 100% of the time, because it's not possible, but there's going to be certain parts of your strategy or phase of life where you can only go and buy a property because you can get a loan. But once you've got the loan, you may not be able to get another loan. So instead of just sitting there and doing nothing, you might go, hey, actually, I can invest in shares, or I can go and invest into a side hustle business. And I think you're alluding to the same thing, but within property itself, to have all these other, I guess, tools, because you just never know when you need to use that tool at some point in your life. Like, let's say your borrowing capacity is now maxed out and you have no interest in renovations and you've never learnt it, you would be under the assumption that you actually have no moves left.
Yeah.
So you have a portfolio that just sits there. Instead, if you go, well, I actually know that I could probably renovate my place. Now, if you outsource it or you do it yourself, you still have to be open-minded to go, I have moves left. And I'm in the camp of whether there's a crash coming, there's no crash coming, there's always an opportunity to make moves or actually, grow your portfolio even further and personally develop as well. Whether times are bad in your business or whether times are good, you can always continue learning. So I love where you're going at with that. And
it has to come back to the education piece, because if you don't know the move exists or you don't know how to execute on the move, it doesn't matter, because like you could be that one step away, but you've got to. I don't know why. I used to play chess all the time when I was a kid. I don't play anymore. And there was this move called en passant. So apparently there's a French move where you can actually take a pawn when you're next to it instead of on the diagonal.
Oh.
But if you don't know that move exists, which obviously you didn't by that reaction,
Yep.
then you didn't know that in certain situations you actually could have got out of that bad situation. So it comes by actually understanding.
Well, it goes to that common saying, you don't know what you don't know. And I think it happens with like real estate all the time, where you go, okay, I only know these locations, so that's the locations I'm going to buy in. But if you don't know that there's other locations that exist, then how are you ever going to go into those deals?
You don't know what you don't know is a much less bougie way of saying it though, Ravi.
Mate, you're on my channel. This is how we do it here.
I thought I was pulling out French chess moves, mate.
I didn't even understand what you were saying. Oompa Loompa move, was that what it's called?
En passant.
Okay, right. There's levels to this game. Yeah. I like the fact that you're wearing a black t-shirt though. That is definitely a thing that we have on the channel.
Is it?
Where I used to, when I started the channel, I used to wear a business shirt. And I think you had mentioned that you watched a few of those videos. And I used to have like a $15 Kmart whiteboard in the back.
Yep.
And the honest truth behind why I used to wear a business shirt, I actually went out to go buy 4 business shirts.
Okay.
I didn't own any business shirts at the time. I went and bought 4 because I was like, I'm going to make YouTube videos. I'm going to look professional. And the honest reason I used to wear them for the YouTube videos, right? This is like real good content for you guys, is because I thought for anyone to take me seriously, I've got to look like I'm super professional. And everyone that talks about anything with authority, they're wearing suits. And I couldn't get myself to wear a suit at home because like it was lockdowns. It was silly. But a shirt I could. And now I look back at that and I was like, man, I don't even relate to that dude. And it didn't feel organic to me. That's why I cringe when I watch those videos. I'm very thankful that I've gone on this journey. But now I wear the black t-shirt and I literally have like 10 to 15 of these. And that's all I wear. But my partner Sanjo, she's like, I think you got to stop wearing the black t-shirts when we go out together, because it makes you more recognizable, because they're like, hey, aren't you that dude from YouTube with the black t-shirt? I'm like, oh shit.
It's funny you say that. I actually got recognized at the gym the other day and I was wearing this shirt as well. Like, it was like, you're the pizza man. I was like, okay.
It would have been great if they knew as the property man.
Yeah. Well, he did start asking me where to buy and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, and not to buy pizza. He wasn't hungry.
All right. Yeah. Moving on to the third lesson. Where are we at?
Third lesson. Oh, that's right. That's my job. Third lesson, broker. Now, what I want to stress here is that it's not just a broker. The lesson was all brokers aren't created equally. And this was something that I really learned over multiple episodes. But again, it was the on-air and off-air conversations where I had a broker at the time. This was back in 2020 when I did the switch. And I remember him telling me I just got to three rentals then. And the portfolio value was still really low. Like it's probably sitting up around 5 mil now, just over. But then it probably would have been, I had one regional property that was worth 100 and something, another that was regional worth 160. And I just bought this one that was a renovator in Morphettvale. Got it for 212 for the house. And then I got it revalued for 340. And we spent like 20 grand on the reno. So like did really well out of it equity wise. And he was like, I can get you 300 at the absolute most. And I remember thinking, oh, this is bad. It's all over, blah, blah, blah. But naturally, talking to everyone on the show and listening, really listening intently to the whole solving problems, coming back to that, I talked to another broker who then told me they could get me 900,000. And my mind was just blown that I was expecting him to come back at maybe like, I can get you 370. Maybe he just knew a little bit of something my broker didn't know. Not, I can get you like triple the amount. It just made no sense. And it was literally the difference between buying a few more rental properties at that time and not. And it's something, and nothing against the broker I had at the time, like good dude. I really genuinely didn't want to leave him because we had quite a friendship at the time as well. But I wouldn't be sitting where I am now property-wise if I had have listened to him. And it's not that he was doing the wrong thing, but he was just doing what he knew. I needed to find someone else that knew more, that had that level up. And it's just a complete game changer. And I talk to so many people now, and I'd imagine you'd have this conversation probably daily, when people are like, oh yeah, I've spoken to the broker. It's the same one like my dad used, blah, 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 or whatever. I don't need to talk to anyone else. It's like, no, like have a look at what other options are out there, because maybe life could be totally different in 10 years' time because of this one phone call that you make.
Yeah, it's the same with not just brokers, but I think your accountant, your buyer's agent, whoever else is in your team. I think it applies to all of them. But yeah, with the broker, it's so interesting because I had a similar journey as well, where I didn't know that you could get a loan being self-employed until you had to wait for certain things. I didn't even know there was other lenders. I think I've mentioned it on the channel where my first broker was not really a broker. He was a home lender and he used to work at CBA, right? Now, amazing dude. I still keep connected with him. I learned so much from him. But the thing is, he only got deals from CBA. So when I speak to people, whether it's disco calls and things like that, they're like, oh, I've already spoken to my broker. And I often ask them the follow-up question, which is, oh, so what banks have they given you? How'd you find your broker? And they're like, oh, no, they work at ANZ. Okay, well, then they're not a broker. They can get you a loan, because I thought it was just, a broker is anyone who can get me a mortgage or a loan. And so in this case, knowing the right people and asking those right questions could mean the difference between you purchasing again. And as we know in this game of real estate, one purchase at the right time, even a year or two later, can make you huge gains.
Yeah.
So I love that.
So I'm listening quite intently to what you're saying, but I'm stuck on disco call. Did I hear you right?
Discovery calls.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense. I'm thinking, what?
You know what's funny as well? Whenever well, it's funny because there's one of those emojis that are like the dancey ones.
Yeah.
And so when we know, it's like, oh, hey, George, what are you up to? And he's like, I'm on a disco call. Man, we're just having a good time at Search Property, all right? All right. Now, lesson 4. Where are we at?
Lesson 4, team selection. So we already know the importance of having like a broker and the right broker, but then it's about understanding like the rest of the team, because you just alluded to it beforehand, the accountant side of things. I had a good accountant. Like I remember I didn't do my tax for a little while. She got me this nice refund. It was all good when I had a couple of properties. And then it got to a few more. I think when I got to like 5 rentals, and she was starting to ask me advice on property. And I remember thinking like, I don't want that. I want my accountant to be so much more successful than I am. So I can be like, how did you do it? What are you doing right that I'm not doing right? And I've now found that. So now I've got an accountant that's like, doing much, much better than I am. And I like it. And I want everyone on the team to make sure that that's how it should be. I don't want to be the smartest guy on my team. I think that's a really good thing to stroke your ego, to feel like you're the king of the trailer park, so to speak. But I'd rather be surrounded by people that I go, wow, I didn't know that. And I think that team selection criteria, actually not the criteria, the process more so, of not being afraid to jump to another person when you feel like you've outgrown them, because it doesn't have to be a relationship forever. And that really actually was hard for me, because on both the broker side and just the normal side for everything else, I'm quite a loyal person. Like I probably stayed at the real estate agency. I was only ever at the one for 8 years. I got job offers all the time. Looking back, I probably should have left. I probably could have learnt more from other agencies, because there was like certain things that they could have done. Like I was selling a lot in the city at the time. I started selling all these like high-end penthouses. And it wasn't the agency that I was at was bad, but that wasn't where their experience was. But I didn't, because I was so loyal to the principle that I had. And I kind of look at that now and I think, whilst the loyalty side of things is really good, and I think it's a quality that I'm proud of, if it stifles your growth, you've really got to ask yourself, like, is it actually really what I want to do? Is it actually the thing that is, I feel like I'm walking a real tightrope here of coming across like an asshole, but I feel like it's something that if you're actually going to do the wrong thing by someone, no, different story. But if you're in business and it's like you've been seeing the same accountant for years, but they're just not, like you say you want to do a company trust structure, and they go, what's that? Don't be like, oh, but I've been seeing Sarah for 10 years now. I got to stick with Sarah. It's like, if Sarah says that, no, probably start looking elsewhere. She might be lovely, but she's probably not your go-to guy to move forward.
It's very relatable. I think everyone that's watching, listening, they all have a similar story, because I've got it with my accountant where I was with him for ages and I'm like, I feel bad to move. Plus there's a bit of laziness as well involved, because you're like, I don't want to switch to someone else, build rapport and all that. But I think the saying is that if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to get out. And so I think it goes with your team as well. If you feel like you've outgrown your team, you probably need to now substitute some of those people. And it has to be a logical decision. Like when you're thinking about your business as well, you're outsourcing parts of your business to certain people that should be better than you at that role. Otherwise, why would you hire them, right? Because if you can do the role better than them, you'd probably just do it yourself. So if you're going out there and you're outsourcing certain parts, it's the same thing with your property business, right? You're going out and outsourcing these things. I think where the real hurdle is for a lot of people is they also traditionally outgrow their friend circles and the people they hang out with now as well. And that's so much harder, where I think there's so much more emotion attached to it, where your friend circle, I don't know about yourself, but for me, when I left school, I had my best mates that I'd been best mates for with 6-7 years, whatever it was. And then within the first 2 years, I stopped talking to all of them, and they all went in a different direction to me. And my direction was, I want to go run my own business. I want to go do things that are a bit different. And they just wanted to go into the job, work your way up, get married, have kids, have a house. That's what they wanted to do. And what happened was, my best mate now was someone I went to school with as well, but never hung out with him. And we reconnected almost 5-6 years later. And now we're best mates. We basically talk every single day. And he went down a very different path, didn't go to uni and whatnot. I went to uni, did all the traditional stuff, and we've now eventually found our way here. And it's the best relationship I've got in terms of my friend circle. Have you experienced a similar thing where you've had to outgrow your friends? And unfortunately, it's it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's just life, right?
Do you listen to Modern Wisdom?
Yes.
The Lonely Chapter, Chris Williamson refers to this as. And I love that show. It's probably one of the few podcasts I actually listen to quite often. And I think it's very true that there's this little like period in between where you kind of haven't got to that next level and you've got those friends. It sounds like it's awesome that you've found that with your mate, but then you might not still connect quite the same way with your old friends. It's that little lonely chapter in between. And I feel like I definitely had that, but honestly, I don't think I noticed it as much because I was so head down, bum up, like focused on building both the portfolio, the podcast. When I was an agent, that's a lifestyle. That's not a job. Like it's constant. And like, I think when I had so much focus on it, I didn't really notice it quite as much, but there are, now that you say that, there's definitely friends that some that I don't speak to at all and some that I speak to very rarely. And I actually don't talk about the portfolio with some of those friends. They've got no idea what we've got. And like, I feel like I can say it on shows like this because they wouldn't watch it because it's not their thing.
Yep.
But yeah, I think the friends that I do have that are really close friends, I've got like 3 of them, I think, that are like my mate, or 3 or 4, that are like really close mates. And some of them, the finance side of things, everything we don't really connect with, but it's more that moral compass, that the values, everything else really align very well. Like one of my best mates, like James, he's a fireman, only just got in. And he's loving life at the moment, being a fiery. You and I were talking before around, was it working at Hugo Boss?
Oh yeah.
For the ladies. Mate, you should have been a fireman.
Wrong career choice.
But him and I see a completely eye to eye on like the values in life, the things that we enjoy, the things that we want to spend time on. And I value friendships like that very differently to like business friendships, because business friendships, they're still super important and there's still definitely that real connection. But I guess I kind of look at it as, if I was going to ring someone and we were only talking about property and that's all we ever sort of like, they always had that connotation to the conversation, I'd look at that and I'd probably categorize that as more like a business friendship.
Yeah.
But like James, he just called me beforehand and I can't remember what he was talking about, something, and this is what I mean, it was just general rubbish, but it was funny. And then I was like, okay, bye. There was nothing to be swapped, nothing to be gained. Those kinds of friendships, I think I place such a larger value on now. I don't even know if I'm answering your question, if I'm taking it a totally different direction, but I feel like there's something genuine about that especially in your 30s, try find that somewhere else. It's very rare. Mm-hmm. Like trying to just make a new friend in your 30s is kind of difficult.
It's super difficult.
Yeah. Like you try and like talk to a dude on the street, you're a weirdo. Like it's not
We're at that point now where I think, I don't know about you if you do it, but if you're walking and if you happen to smile at someone that's walking the other way, I guarantee you they think you're weird.
Yeah. You know what I've actually found? The best place to make friends, and I also have found that apparently this is like a gay hangout, so it's
risky?
Well, yeah, apparently. No, actually, let me clarify this now. I meet guys in the sauna, right? But I've now been told by people that's like, that's a gay thing, Todd. I'm like, no, it's not. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay, not the sauna I go to. But anyway, whatever floats your boat. But I go to the sauna at the gym. I'll always meet someone new and interesting. And I find that there's something weird about sitting there in your board shorts, sweating in 70-degree heat, but you just chat. But if I was just sitting down on a normal seat, not in my underpants, basically, not sweating, it would be weird to chat.
That is wild.
Yeah. Anyway.
Can only imagine the conversations, but we digress. Final lesson, my friend.
I'm definitely not answering your questions properly.
What's our final lesson, Todd?
Final lesson, unit blocks. I used to think unit blocks were just for investors that had millions and millions and millions to spend on like a single purchase. They're really not. Like a good unit block offers so many different things. It's like a lot of the time it can allow you to be able to take control of more land than you would have been able to otherwise purchase in a cost-effective way to hold because of the amount of yield that comes with it. Whereas like sometimes if you've got a house on like a quarter acre of land, you're probably going to have a really bad yield on that thing. So unless you've got some pretty solid plans to develop it pretty soon, or you're just fine with like sacrificing the growth elsewhere, it can be troublesome. But plus you've got other options when it comes to strata titling them out. When it comes to actually improving the value, you can, if you are strataing them out, end up buying a 4-pack strata out to then sell one to lower your LVR. Like there's just all of these options. And I never knew that was a thing until I was actually pretty deep in the podcast. And it was speaking to, can't even remember who it was. And we were basically talking about scale. It's all about growth. And then when I found out that a lot of their growth came from, they bought a 4-pack, then they bought a 6-pack. And it was like, what do you mean you've just gone from 10 rentals to 20? It was 2 purchases, but it was done in a way where they could add value to the equity uplift. They had great cash flow. And it was also done in a way where they didn't have to actually do 10 separate purchases. There was that kind of velocity in the return as well. Mm. And yeah, it just completely opened up my eyes to unit blocks.
It's interesting because I think it probably extends from even just unit blocks. It's, knowing that there are so many ways to get to financial freedom or to that number, which is, you want to retire on 100K or 150K, 200K. There's not just one way to get there. And I talk about on my channel, like, yes, okay, I avoid the off the plan stuff. I avoid the house and land packages, but I've never gone, hey, you shouldn't develop. I've never gone, you shouldn't renovate. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't go and buy these sort of properties. I just think that when people pigeonhole themselves, they're probably, again, to your point, which you made earlier, is they're probably trying to sell you something. And I think when you're actually just trying to build wealth out, there's certain people that will gravitate more towards a particular tactic that could work better. And in this case, when you're figuring out, like maybe I'm at that phase or that season of my portfolio where unit blocks actually make a lot of sense.
Yeah, starting with it is probably a bit of a jump in the deep end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what I was alluding to is, there's probably different phases of your portfolio, which one starts making more sense than the other. And I think it's just being around people or learning it for yourself that there are different ways that you can, scale up that portfolio.
The other thing that's coming to mind is the work ethic side of things. Just this is just a little bit of a freebie, bit of a bonus tip.
Oh, bonus. Wow.
Should have said to stick around to the end at the start for this.
Should give them the teaser.
but the work ethic side of it, now that I look back as well, like I don't think I've spoken to one person on the show that's just like brags about not working when they're at work. That's all like, oh yeah, working hard, hardly working. Oh lol. Like it's not how it works. Like everyone that I've spoken to, whatever they do, they do it well. They do it with their heart and soul. They put the hours in. Like to be the kind of person that can do what hardly anyone can do, a lot of the times you need to be the kind of person that does what hardly anyone does. And
100%. I love that.
Yeah.
Because it's usually, I use the other reference, which is you want to live the 1% life by doing what 99% of people do. It's not going to happen, right? You got to do what others haven't done to achieve what others can't.
Yeah. I reckon that would probably be the top list, Ravi.
Wow. Magic from Todd from Pizza and Property. I really appreciate your time, man, for being on the channel and inviting me into your space. I definitely think this is a higher production value than me sitting in my room. But each to their own.
I was hoping you'd bring the lamp in with you. I want to meet it.
It got confiscated at the airport.
Did it really? Why did I fall for that?
I appreciate your time, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Now, guys, if you want to check out more content, definitely go across, search up Pizza and Property on basically any platform at this point. If you even on Google and search it, and you'll find Todd's face somewhere, and he interviews a bunch of guests where I think you're going to get a lot of value from. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can actually watch it on Spotify as well, completely ad-free on YouTube and Spotify. So if you want to subscribe wherever you're watching it, then do so as well. But thanks, Todd, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode.